Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here today, and it's actually really great for me to come back for a second year. I was at RoachFest London last year. I got to speak with many of you, and it was really rewarding to hear your stories, learn more about what you're doing, learn about how Cockroach can be a part of that. And that's what we're going to talk about today is how this has evolved into some new features and capabilities that have come in our most recent release. And then, of course, we'll have many more conversations in the break and afterwards about what else do you need to really be as successful as possible here. So modern applications really demand everything, right? Always on, everywhere, built to scale. We heard lots of different people talk about this today, this 24/7, 365 idea, whether or not it's OpenAI and Ori together or sum up earlier at the break, right? This is a vital category, vital importance, this resilience idea, right? And when we think about this, we also realize that in addition to these capabilities, we also need to make sure that while we're providing you value, we're also thinking about how you achieve that value. So what hardware is necessary, what software is necessary, what labor is necessary here, right? We're constantly thinking about sort of both sides of this value and exchange equation. I'm really excited to talk about a little bit of the deployment types of things that we're investing in here at Cockroach Labs. For a long time now, we have had a on-premise or self-hosted product. This product is really capable, it's really flexible, it's really configurable, and it's really powerful, but it also requires a lot of operators and SREs and folks in your organization, right? And so at the other end of that spectrum, we have built CockroachDB Cloud, which is extremely powerful in its own way because it does a lot of the operation orchestration setup for you. But it comes with a lot of conventions that are not the same as the configurations on self-hosting. And so we've been thinking about this for a while and understanding the spectrum between the two and realized that there is a third possibility here that sort of blends the two, which is bring your own account. This is something that we're excited to talk to you all about today. It's something in private preview for us. We're working with several design partners, and we'd love to work with you all as well on, which really blends the benefits of our managed product with our on-premise product. So just like our managed product, we take care of all of the sort of management of the product for you, but it's inside your cloud service provider account, which means you get to decide the security profile and access that you want. You get to leverage your relationship with the cloud service providers here. And so this is really built on the foundation of our understanding of the pain points and problems within your organization. And we're quite excited to sort of meet you where you're at, wherever that is on your deployment journey. Earlier today in Peter's keynote, he talked about resilience, and it's something that you'll find me continuing to reference throughout the presentation today as we talk about the new features we built, why we built them. It's key to our thinking and our development, and we really want to continue to be state of the art, right? We have done a lot in our sort of multi-active, active-active environment, but we're not resting on our laurels. We're continuing to always push the envelope as far as possible, right? So we talked about performance under adversity, and that's powered by doing things continually in this development. So in our most recent release, we introduced this new feature called lead releases, which remove a single point of failure in the resilience of CockroachDB, right? And this is a thing that we're continuing to push for. We're looking for every single possible way to up the reliability, up the capabilities of Cockroach for you. Last year at RoachFest London, I announced that we had GA'd physical cluster replication, or PCR. PCR is Cockroach Labs' approach to active-passive deployments, and it's a really powerful tool that lets you have one cluster that is serving your production read and write traffic, and a standby cluster that is serving business operations or is around and available for you to fail over to in the event of a problem here. So this lets you survive a region outage, a cloud service provider outage, and it provides really powerful RPO and RTO, right? So these are the sort of state-of-the-art terms that we always talk about, the recovery point and recovery time objectives here. This is a super powerful, very well used, very loved feature from our customers. And we're excited to announce that it's going to be in private preview on our Cockroach Cloud product later this month as well. In addition to PCR, we've also invested heavily in something called logical data replication, or LDR. LDR is Cockroach's approach to sort of active deployments where you might not want to scale to multi-region. You might be constrained to 2 data centers like we talked about, or 2 regions in the PCR case. Or you might have more complex needs here where you actually want to have region survivability, but also low latency within the specific region for your read and write operations. LDR is something that we introduced in preview earlier this year, and we're excited that as our 25.2 release, the release that just happened for Cockroach, that we've actually moved this into GA. We're already seeing massive adoption of this feature at some of our largest customers with several workloads in production, and it's quite exciting because it sort of opens up the configurations here, right? And that's a theme that we're thinking about here at Cockroach, which is that like we want to be opinionated. We want to tell you what's state of the art. We want to tell you the right way to do things. But we also want to be flexible and be able to fit into your deployment options, your cloud service provider options, your region options, and sort of meet each use case with the capabilities that it needs to have. So that's some of the resilience capabilities that we sort of always like to lead with and build on, because we want to make sure that we're constantly in your mind when you think about Cockroach, you think about the resilient bug itself. And in addition to that, we're also been thinking a lot over the last year about scaling your people, process, and technology, right? So a lot of times we talk about CockroachDB, the software itself, but we also are users of hardware, so we have to think about that, think about how we use that hardware and how to get more out of that. Peter started to talk about this earlier today. And then we also are used by your developers, your operators, your SREs. We want to make your labor scale effectively too, right? And so we've made a huge amount of investment in this process to make this an easy-to-use database that matches the powerful capabilities here. Finally, we can have the best database in the world, but if we're too difficult for you to migrate to, it won't matter. And so we have to be thinking about that constantly, right? And we'll talk more about that, but we're excited about several advancements in that capability. So we saw this slide earlier today from Peter. He talked a lot about resource efficiency or hardware efficiency, right? And what you could see on this chart is that starting in November 24.3 release, so that was the last release of last calendar year, we've really invested in the CPU and throughput efficiency here. So each successive month, each successive release of this year, we have pushed this number higher, right? And we have done this by taking a multifaceted approach. Some of this is big, new, exciting features in this capability stack, and some of this is actually relentless focus to detail. So there are over 100 different small tweaks that we've made to incrementally build together to achieve this throughput and performance. And what's powerful about this is that when we achieve throughput performance improvements on the same amount of CPU, so if it took you 3 nodes previously and to achieve your goals, what we want to do is make sure that you actually don't need to continue to horizontally and vertically scale. We have the capabilities to do that. A lot of people have talked about future-proofing your capabilities here. We want to be more resource efficiency so that you actually don't need as many nodes in the future, right? And so we're constantly thinking about this value exchange, right? If we're going to provide a lot of value to you, we also want to make it easy for you to adopt us and adopt us widely across your tech stack by being good stewards and good users of hardware. All of this change doesn't even come with some of our most exciting features yet turned on. We have a new feature called buffered writes, which is going to dramatically improve our throughput and corresponding use of CPU in the process. That feature is in preview right now, and it's going to be turned on in GA later this year, right? So we're going to, if I leave you with one idea more than anything else, is that we're going to be focused on this problem for every single release for the foreseeable future. There will be a new exciting feature, a new exciting capability, new outcomes that you can measure in terms of your hardware efficiency via Cockroach for basically the foreseeable future. In addition to making the overall system more efficient, we've also been thinking about individual features, individual capabilities, how they interact with performance themselves, how they interact with foreground traffic. And so we're excited about a couple of different ones here that I'll mention as a part of 25.2. The first is that we know that no schema remains static, right? The needs of your customers change, the needs of your applications change, schemas evolve over time, right? And that means that your indexing strategy might evolve over time as well. And Cockroach for many years has had online schema changes, this really powerful feature that lets you adapt your schema without actually taking the database offline, part of our resilience profile. But one of the things that we've worked really hard on is to improve the speed at which these index changes occur, right? So make sure that they actually occur fast so that you can realize the development changes here. So not only do you not have to go on offline, but you don't have to exist in a state where you're on your old schema for a long period of time either. This works at scale. We've seen a 30% improvement here in the index backfill or index schema change performance here. And that's only one of several exciting features. CDC, which was talked about earlier by Suma, has dramatically improved its performance by reducing the amount of duplicates, right? So we've reduced those by 80 to 90%, which improves the performance of CDC. Materialized views, which are a popular use case for keeping access to your data, keeping them fresh. When we have to refresh materialized views, we actually have made these drop from having an impact on foreground traffic to very little to no impact on foreground traffic. So we're continuing to look at the system overall, and we're also continuing to look at individual features using the system and pushing performance, capabilities, efficiency as much as possible. That's hardware efficiency, right? We're excited about that. That benefits everybody. It's a rising tide lifts all boats. But we also want to think about labor. We want to think about your application development, your operators as you do these things. We want to make sure your teams scale, right? We want to make sure that Cockroach continues to be an efficient to use database as well. This means that we are constantly adding to our SQL capabilities. We introduced JSON Path, which is an extension of JSON and Postgres ecosystem, or sort of unstructured data capabilities here. We introduced stored procedures a few releases ago, and stored procedures are really interesting because they sound simple in that they're like one feature capabilities, but there's actually like hundreds of features within stored procedures. And so we've continued to push the compatibility angle for stored procedures specifically, as we have lots of exciting developments here, including cursors and other capabilities. In just this minute, I'm going to have Rob Reed give us a demo because you can never have too much Rob Reed in any presentation. And he's going to walk us through row-level security. Row-level security is a really powerful feature for Cockroach. It enables a new class of use cases, which is around multi-tenancy here, where you really want to control what data is available to your application and how this works. And it's part of our continued sort of enterprise-grade, enterprise footprint here. You can work around some of these capabilities, but it requires lots of extra application development and logic and time and effort, and we don't want you to have to do that. We want to pull that into the database, make the database do it for you, right? So with that, I'm actually going to invite our specialist here to play the video from Rob of this demo of row-level security.
In and of itself, row-level security is already enormously powerful, but when paired with multi-region geo-partitioning, you can guarantee that data will not only be physically stored in a locality, but also that it will never leave that locality. Today, I'll show you how to use row-level security in CockroachDB to give you an idea as to what this new feature will look like. I'll spin up a 9-node simulated multi-region local cluster using Cockroach Demo, and I'll create a database called Store. We'll simulate an e-commerce workload with 3 regions, US East 1, US West 1, and Europe West 1. I'll create a tenant table that will store the ID and the name of the tenant, and I'll create the member table again, but this time it will include a tenant ID, which forms part of the primary key. Both tables are regional by row. Next, I'll create 2 users, both member services as in the last example, but this time they're tenant specific. One will be for the Acme company, and one will be for another company. I'll enable row-level security for the member table, insert some tenant data. So we'll have an Acme Incorporated company and an other company, both based in US East 1. I'll create some members for the Acme company, spread across different regions, and I'll create some data for the other company, or other tenant. Looking at the data, we have 3 users for the Acme Incorporated company and 3 users for the other incorporated company. Now I'll create some policies. The first will be a restrictive policy, which uses the same logic as the previous example, but this time is restrictive. Users must have a combination of this policy and another more permissive tenant-specific policy in order to view their data. First, I'll create that, and then I'll create 2 permissive policies. One for the Acme tenant to the Acme member service, and one for the other tenant to the other member service. Now, if I ask for all US East 1 data for the Acme service account, I'll only see Acme data for US East 1. The same holds for US West 1 and Europe West 1, while the other tenant is only able to see its data, US East 1, other company data, US West 1, other company data, and Europe West 1 other company data. If we take a look at the explain, we'll see that any queries to this table also include the region and the tenant ID. So what I've just demonstrated is the same user, the member service, or a multi-tenant specific member service, accessing the same table, but only viewing a small subset of the data. Our powerful geo-partitioning feature allows you to physically house data in a specific location, but when combined with row-level security, you can limit a user to only being able to select regional data.
Great, thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. One of my favorite things about Rob in particular is that he is so thorough and he has made so many of these wonderful videos. This is actually a subset of a longer video where he walks through a more complex combination of using geo-partitioning and row-level security, covers many of the other capabilities here in a little bit greater detail. So I definitely encourage everyone to check out Rob's videos at some future point. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about observability. So we have invested quite a lot in observability here because we know that this is a big time consumer of labor, right? This is a big effortful activity. You want to know what's happening with your application, what's happening with your database. You want to be able to solve these problems. You want to be able to tie them all back together. And this is something that is just vital, right? We heard from Ori earlier today about how observability was key to their solution being chosen by OpenAI, right? We know that it is key for many of you and something that we want to keep an eye on. So one of the things that we've really been thinking about is how to tie applications and databases together in this observability stack. And what you can see is that now in CockroachDB 25.2, we've introduced application metrics, database metrics, and really just detailed latency matrix around these capabilities. This lets you understand which application is having an impact on your system, which database is having an impact on your system, really start to tie the full stack together here. Because of course, there are database journeys that I live and breathe every day, but they're only a sub part of the larger application journey. And we want to make sure that we're really fitting in well to those conversations. And a similar idea, we have two other changes that we've introduced. In the top of the screen here, we see on CockroachDB Cloud, so our managed service offering, this ability to provide labels now around your clusters, right? So you have a better understanding of which cluster is doing which kind of activity, why is it doing it, how is it doing it. And then, of course, we're adding to change feeds as well, thinking about really introducing custom context on these CDC Kafka headers, right? This is all about sort of tying everything together into one big picture that makes it understandable for you about what's going on with your application and your database. There are so many interesting observability changes that it was actually really hard to settle on which one to talk about. I wanted to talk to you today about all of the work we've done around hotspot detection with range logs, but that requires a little bit more time. So I'm going to talk about something that I think will apply to everybody instead, which is workload level index recommendations. Previously, Cockroach has actually been thinking a lot about index recommendations. We have provided index recommendations for individual statement fingerprints. And this is powerful because it can tell you for an individual statement what index might actually speed it up, might make it better in the process here. But it didn't have sufficient context. It only understood an individual statement here, right? Which could mean over-optimizing for an individual statement at the cost of the overall workload. So in 25.2, we've actually introduced workload level index recommendations. This is where we actually think about the entire workload in mind when we provide you an index. So instead of providing potentially duplicative indexes or indexes that work at cross purposes to your actual workload, we think about your entire workload and create a set of indexes that will help you specifically in the process here. Again, this is something that you could do with effort and time and intensity, right? But why not have the database who has access to information do it for you, make it smarter, make it easier, make it better? We've talked a lot about vector data and vector search today. I'm really excited about this. I also think it's impressive that we made it several minutes into my presentation before I talked to you about AI today. I know that's the challenge in any conversation these days, right? But CockroachDB has an important role to play here, right? So we have had vector data now for several releases. As of 25.2, we have vector indexing to accelerate search. That's in preview state. And the way Cockroach can be really powerful is a part of this RAG protocol, or retrieval augmented protocol here. And the way to think about this is this RAG is a powerful tool for having the right context available for these searches, right? It enables you to sort of reduce some of the hallucinations, other capabilities here. CockroachDB is particularly differentiated in our search indexing in that we built our own indexing from scratch. And the reason we did that is we were looking around at the various implementations, the various algorithms, and we found they didn't kind of do everything that we thought was actually necessary for our customers to be successful, right? And so we spent a lot of time and effort to do some custom thinking, custom development in the process here. And our vector indexing automatically keeps data up to date, right? This is extremely powerful because you don't have to go back and re-index, put this information back in place. It sort of always has the latest information that's necessary here to make good decisions. And then it lets you combine with traditional search to filter out a subset of data. So you could filter on customer ID while you're doing this additional vector search indexing, which is, again, quite a powerful technique that's sort of native built into Cockroach. CockroachDB is already your operational data store. It already has a lot of the really valuable other information here. And when you pair that with the vector data, you're actually able to really provide powerful means, especially in the context of Cockroach, which means resilient, scale, all these capabilities. Finally, the last thing I'm going to talk about today is optimized migrations. So you can have the absolute best house available on the market or apartment where I'm from in New York City, or I think flat, as you all say here, right? But if there's no way to get your stuff into that apartment or flat, you're not moving, right? You need a moving truck, a dolly, boxes, people to help you lift the activities, right? And if we don't provide that to you, you're not going to move to CockroachDB, right? And so that's what we think about here is how do we make this easier on you? How do we make it easier for you to find all these great capabilities of Cockroach and use and leverage them? We talk a lot about the entire migration stack of activities here. Every successful migration I've ever seen has had significant planning involved to think about the challenges. These are complex projects. There's lots of capabilities, lots of people that need to be informed, lots of stakeholders that need to be aligned. We need to think about the schema, right? Is your schema going to be not just functionally set up, but also performant when you make the change? We need to actually move the data itself. We need to cut over the application so they're now reading from a different database. And then you need to verify the migration. You need to make sure that you didn't lose any data, that everything is consistent, right? This is your crown jewels, your most mission critical data, right? We have to be treating that with the respect and care that it deserves, right? And so Cockroach has tooling to help you with each of these capabilities, right? We have the schema conversion tool that will help you move from Oracle or MySQL or Postgres or SQL Server here. We have Molt Fetch, which I'll talk about here in a few more minutes, which is about the data movement here in the process. And then Molt Verify, which helps verify the data is correct, that you can be confident in your cutover, that you can actually make the full migration and sort of burn the boat, so to speak. Molt Fetch is really about moving your data with ease. When we were looking at a lot of the migration data tooling out there, our original strategy was to start to partner with a lot of the third-party tools, because many of you are already familiar with these tools and use them, and that's an effective strategy, something that we have continued and will continue to invest in. But what we realize is that in a distributed SQL world, there's a different set of paradigms. There's a different amount of scale involved here, right? So we've done extremely large migrations of 30 terabytes plus, right, in this process. And when you're at a 30 terabyte migration, you have to worry about whether or not something will go wrong at some point during that data migration, right? If you get 28 terabytes into 30 terabytes and you have a failure, you've wasted a huge amount of time, money, effort in the process, right? And so we actually built our own migration tool, Molt Fetch, to include things like fine-grained checkpointing, automatic retries, be able to handle the scale that our customers are using Cockroach for. If you're migrating to Cockroach, many times you've outgrown your current legacy system, right? And that's really where Molt comes from. It's this migrate off legacy technology ideas. And so if that's the case, there's a certain amount of scale that we need to power and provide for you here. In addition to this fine-grained checkpointing and retries, we also have improved observability and a very active development team that is happy to give you some of that advice along the way, as well as support you in this process as we go. We've GA'd Postgres, MySQL, and CockroachDB for this migration tool, and I'm excited to announce that we have private preview support for Oracle coming in June with a public preview to follow. So we're really excited to help you move from Oracle, move from a lot of these legacy systems into CockroachDB, and of course we'll continue to invest here over time. We've talked a lot about the tooling that's necessary to enable migrations, but it's not just sufficient to get you to move the data from one database to our database, we also have to make sure that it fits within your application. So some have actually talked about this today, which was nice. I didn't know they were going to share this story today, right? But in a Postgres ecosystem, it's very common for you to have Postgres and Debezium, right? And if you have these tools together, one of the reasons you might want to move to Cockroach is that you don't need two tools. We have native CDC built in. But if all of your downstream consumers of that data expect the format to be in a Debezium format, well, then that could be a problem, right? Because you have to go back and change every single one of those downstream consumers. And at a large enough company, you might not have access to all the teams that consume those things. They might not want to change their data model to do this, right? And so we have enriched CDC to have Debezium compatibility here. It's a familiar format. It's something that fits into what you know today. And it's something that we hope will ease this migration. And this is all about the idea, right, of thinking about what are the pain points, what are the problems, where do you invest, what are the challenges here, and how can we make that easier for you as a company? Finally, I'm going to wrap up today by talking about exactly what CockroachDB aims to do. We really aim to redefine the limits of operational data. We want to make it easy for you to modernize, to come off of your legacy technology. We want to be cloud native. We have all the options and availability you need here. We have some amazing customers. There are many of them here in the room today that leverage our managed product on the cloud. We have many self-hosted customers that are also on the cloud. And of course, we have many self-hosted customers that are in their own private data center. We're excited about meeting you where you're at, wherever your deployment is. That's one of the real values of CockroachDB is that it's cloud service provider agnostic. It's on-premise and cloud agnostic. We even have customers today who are stretching CockroachDB across private data centers and public data centers. So we're really continue to invest in this capability. This is where BYOA fits in as well, right? It's about sort of operationally and flexibly meeting you where you're at. CockroachDB is the state-of-the-art resilient database. We're not content to rest on our laurels. We're going to continue to invest here over time, things like lead releases, advancing PCR and LDR, all of these capabilities. We scale effortlessly to meet demands, right? It's extremely exciting to see OpenAI and Ori together and how large this has become and how vital Cockroach has been to be part of that ecosystem. And we want to enable you to meet your needs wherever your customers are, whether or not you're dealing with new regulation, new expansion opportunities to additional regions. Maybe the regions themselves change their regulation. We're here to help and partner with you in that capability. Really to just simplifies your operations, right? So we talked about the hardware efficiency improvements. We talked about the software capabilities here. And then, of course, the labor or streamlining our application and development ecosystem. With that, I want to thank you all for your time today and just let you know that I will be at the break standing in the main section right here. So if you have questions about any of these features you heard about today, you want to tell me about which feature you want to hear about next year when I come back, I'm more than happy to talk with you, and I love these conversations. So please don't be shy about coming up and talking with me today. Thank you.